Welcome to the Act Out Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Tomlin. Before we begin, I need you to like, to subscribe, to give a 5-star review. The best way of getting this message across is to share it. Share it with your friends, your families, and opinion influencers. Actually, on that note, if there is an opinion influencer or anyone that you would like for the Act Out Podcast to talk to, I want you to email us at guests@theactoutpodcast.com, or feel free to tag any of those opinion influencers on social media. I'm definitely not above it. My absolute favorite thing in the world are constructive compliments. Please feel free to drop a constructive compliment down below in the form of a comment. For any complaints you have, please send those to Syracuse University. And remember, you spell Adam O-T-T-O. That actually works out well. He and I have the exact same size head. Today's episode comes from a stone's throw away from Skaneateles, New York. We're talking with Russell Kramer. Although I am far too humble to admit it, my entire life I've said that I am the best friend money can buy. And, well, Russell will be able to validate that. He was my fraternity brother. He and I talked about the evolution of friendship over time and grief. Why did I end on grief if I were trying to set myself up for a bit? That was not helpful at all. Well, we also talked about our old play-by-play days where we reenacted a scene from Angels in the Outfield. Now, I can't remember if the kid actually hit a home run or not, but in my heart, he did, and that's where it counts. You know, right before the boys were about to take the field, we at the Daro Delinquents would try to give them a cheer to rile up their spirits and to soar them on to victory. So I thought it would be only fitting to give you that cheer today. Everyone on 3. 1, 2, 3. Petrol, 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 troll. Let's roll the tape. Caca! So I actually was thinking this morning, but actually by the time that this makes air, it'll be, I think, 20 years since you and I first met each other.
Yep.
At the old fraternity house at SAE.
Oglethorpe University.
Yeah.
Shout out to the Petrels.
Fly, Stormers fly.
Yep. No, it was good. It's
Yeah.
good. Feels like yesterday in a lot of ways and lifetimes ago in a lot of ways as well.
Yeah, man. 20 years is a really long time.
Yeah.
Whenever I first got there, Lil Wayne was shooting the video for Fireman.
Fireman.
Yeah.
Of course.
That was my bid day, actually.
Yep. I remember that. Gosh, that was quite a day. That was my would have been my second year at school there. And so first year with the bid day not being a pledge or not turning in my bid. And so first day is kind of a brother and yeah, all the excitement. And I don't know, the details are a little bit sparse, but yeah, the feelings are still obviously there and a lot of good memories for sure.
I'm trying to think of like the first time that you and I had actually met. Before we had met, I had kind of seen you. And I was super intimidated by you. Like you were in my head like the ideal person of what like the frat guy would look like. And for some reason, 18-year-old Adam, that was super intimidating for.
Yeah, I don't know. That's definitely, I don't think anything I wouldn't describe myself as an intimidating person or try not to certainly be an intimidating person. But I think a lot of that is just finding yourself as an 18-year-old, being on campus, being in environments for the first time. I mean, I can remember similar feelings as a first year and going through that experience and kind of have an idea of what I think that looks like and what that's supposed to feel like. And then, then going through it, obviously, like anything in life, was significantly different and everyone felt older and had been through kind of those experiences and knew what to expect. And, as a first year, you're just overloaded with all kinds of sensories and, being away for the first time and all these new people in the same space, going through the same thing at the same time. And Yeah, I was definitely, I think the experience as a whole is an intimidating thing, is especially as a young person coming to college and trying to just sort of feel your way through those experiences, but also, at least for me, trying to, fit in and feel a
Mm.
part of that community as well. Yeah, I think it's definitely a little bit of sensory overload in those spaces for sure.
You mentioned something about fitting in,
Yeah.
and that was, I think, like my number one goal
Yeah.
at that point in time. I mean, like throw aside all the scholastic achievements I
Sure.
definitely would have had if I, but no, my number one goal was fitting in and
Yeah.
trying to find a sense of community. And I struggled at the beginning because I had absolutely no idea what a liberal arts school was.
Yeah.
Like I had heard that Oglethorpe was the Harvard of the South.
Sure.
Actually, to be fair, I think Harvard is the Oglethorpe of the North, but debate over
I have seen
semantics.
that on some high end publications for sure. Yeah.
But yeah, so I kind of basically was like, this is a prestigious school. I'm going to go there, but had absolutely no idea like what liberal arts meant.
Yeah.
And so I remember like meeting people for the first time, being like, these people are not like anything I've ever met in Cartersville.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that was a big shift, a big transition. Yeah.
It was the very first time, like, to go from a rural town to Atlanta, first of all, was like huge culture shock. Like you're talking about sensory overload and stuff. I mean, yes, I definitely experienced that in every sense.
Yeah.
I think that what, for me, the crux of it was like, I need to find a sense of community or I'm not going to last very long in this place.
Yeah.
And so then whenever I did the, whenever I like rushed, I think seeing you, it was like simultaneously like a goal. Hey man, maybe I can get there one day. And also like, I think I can fit in here. And I remember being extremely excited about it. But in hindsight, I think I put too much onus on me trying to fit in.
Yeah.
Instead of me just trying to be myself.
Yeah, well, I think that's something I still struggle with today, even at 39. I think that's something that it's scary to, be 100% authentically yourself. I mean, I think you try to go through all walks of life, I think trying to mirror as closely to kind of who you feel you are. But I think it's natural to, want to fit in or want to feel accepted. And I think at times, just depending on the personality that you are, the person you are, the things that you've experienced in life. Some are, dapt or better at others at kind of sticking closer to that, making it a full circle as opposed to kind of an overlap Venn diagram of blending in with other folks. Mm-hmm. And, for some, it comes real easily. For others, like I said, something I definitely think about and I've certainly thought a lot more about as I've gotten older and just had more life experiences for sure. It's, I completely, I mean, I was in a very similar spot, just a year, 18 months, 12 months ahead of you, just trying to feel like, oh gosh, I'm at college and I'm on the soccer team. So I'm trying to fit in there and be a good teammate, but I also want, this other part of, fraternity and social space there to be a part of my college experience. So trying to figure out where that works and how that fits into my college life. And, so you sort of see folks that there's a lot of similarities, but then you're always, you're just, I don't know, I think some of the structure of the way fraternity life is set up, you're kind of trying to appease older folks and just, like you said, fit in. And it's just a kind of a dangerous line sometimes, I think. But, when you're 18, those are things you think about at all, right? You're just trying to.
Didn't even realize there was a line.
Make it one day to the next and kind of go 24 hours at a time. And I think fitting in is definitely something that you just always are kind of trying to, I don't know if battle is the right word, but just sort of, hey, I want to stick to kind of who I am and what I believe in, but also, I'm one that's not always trying to search out conflict either. So, maybe there are definitely moments where that then causes me to maybe be a little more quieter or maybe a little bit more reserved just because, I don't know, it's sort of, is the juice worth the squeeze? And then, you just sort of constantly thinking about those types of things.
Were you, I'm assuming college, that was really the first time that you were kind of responsible for yourself in a sense. And like trying to find that balance with like being a good teammate and also being able to like have a social life and all. How much of a struggle was it to transition to like that responsible Russ?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I had an incredible college experience. I was super, super lucky. But I also had a pretty unique college experience. I lost a parent. My mom passed away when I was in college. She got sick when I was a sophomore, right before my sophomore year, and passed away was just 19 years ago this last week, actually, September 2nd in 2006. So, there was a lot of things thrown at me at the time. There's a big transition for me. Just, not only going off to school, I had a great childhood, lived, the further I get away from it, the more I'm grateful for it, and definitely have better and better perspective. I think like everyone does as time goes and you get older and you have more experiences, and, you start to appreciate those things and feel super lucky, and, was able to grow up in a place feeling very loved, and, had a pretty, I would say, sort of normal childhood, and, was lucky enough to have college be a part of, sort of growing up and knowing that I was going to have a chance to go to college, and then trying to figure out playing sports and what fit and what worked. And Oglethorpe was a great fit for me in terms of it was a little bit further away from home. And so I kind of got that sense of, hey, I'm out of my own space, but it wasn't too far away from home that I couldn't get back if I needed to. And then also my mom is from Atlanta, and so I had family that was still there. My grandparents were both still living at the time. My aunt and uncle lived there. It's a place I'd gone and visited, New Atlanta, so I was like familiar with the space. And so it was kind of a perfect combination of a new space where I felt like I was on my own, but also had some familiarity, so it wasn't total just blank slate. So yeah, trying to figure that out, trying to be on my own, trying to be responsible, trying to learn a lot of things through really trial and error, just like a lot of 18-year-olds. I think you learn a lot through experiences. And so, yeah, trying to balance that. And then all of a sudden, you're hit going into my sophomore year that my mom is sick, and my mom has been diagnosed with cancer. And, gosh, it doesn't even feel real as a 19-year-old, it's just like, you hear those, you just like see stuff in movies or you hear stories, but it's like, oh, that's nothing that I'm going to have to cross in terms of, life experience, at least certainly not as a sophomore in college. And then you're sort of hit with that, and you've got a younger brother and a family, and you're going through those things. And then so all of a sudden, for me personally, it sort of shifts from I'm kind of focused on myself to, wow, now I'm worried about others. And, I kind of, I think those are things that I'm still kind of trying to unpack and work through. And, because in the moment when that happens, I think I just naturally, and, you don't think about it as at that time, but you just sort of, doing things within your brain to kind of protect yourself. And so it was definitely a unique kind of college experience to where a lot of different things sort of got thrown into my plate at once that, some were very normal for a college student, and others, I think, a little bit different of an experience, kind of going through and dealing with some other, family experiences that, I certainly hope that not a lot of college students have to go through, for sure. But yeah, it's a tough balance, but, I think those are things that I think way more about now as a near 40-year-old, as opposed to a fresh into college. I was just, trying to get through day by day at that point, I think,
You and I had gotten pretty close my second semester, so the semester after I rushed. And I remember coming back. Was your mom diagnosed like over the summer between 2000 fall, or spring 2006 and fall 2006?
So dad had told me, I remember it was right before coming back for my sophomore year of college. So it was like August of 05. And then mom ended up passing away in September of 06. So it was basically about a year from kind of getting that information and then kind of working through that. And then, unfortunately, mom passed away in September. So it would have been going into right at the beginning of it was like that first big weekend. It was Labor Day weekend of sophomore, or my junior year, your sophomore year.
That was the very first experience that I had of having a close friend lose someone that was so close to them.
Yeah.
And I remember knowing in my head, hey, this is a really big deal and I need to be there for him. But at the same time, I had absolutely no idea what to do to be able to to try to help you out. I think in my head, it was I have got to distract him at all costs. I've got to have him basically forget this horrible thing. But in hindsight, I think that I should have probably, just tried to worry about just being beside you,
right,
as opposed to trying to distract you from anything.
Yeah, I mean, hindsight obviously gives you a little bit different perspective, but I mean, I've thought about it a lot, and gosh, it's like it's a really difficult. I mean, even now at it's been like I said, it's been almost 20 years since
Yeah.
my mom passed away, and I'm luckily enough, like even now, I still don't have that many people that have gone through that in my life that have experienced that, and so certainly thinking back to when we were in that time in our lives, like it's just one of those things that's difficult. If you've never been through that experience, it's really tough to kind of connect. It's hard to know what to do. I mean, my gosh,
Yeah.
we were so young. Like, what are you supposed to like? How I remember thinking about it a lot. I was like, I felt a weird sense of guilt's not the right word, but it was one of those things where, similar to you thinking, oh, I want to just kind of distract there. I mean, I think I was definitely encouraging of that from friends because it was not something that I sort of avoided. I didn't talk about a lot. I didn't know how to deal with it. I didn't know, I didn't feel like it was fair to put friends or people that I cared about in spots where it was like, it's always such a, even now to this day, you say things and you like want people to know your story because I want people to know about my mom and I love her and love the person that she was. And, but, you say it and, the immediate reaction is, oh, it's like kind of a negative, so it's even at times now, even though it's been so long, it's like a weird thing to not necessarily lead with, but even just to let people know. And, you never trying to bring that up in that frame or anything like that. You just sort of want people to have the whole picture of who you are and kind of how you got to be in the space that you're in. And yeah, no, I think it's tough when you're that age as a friend because, friendships, they shift so much. Even you and I just talking about how much our friendship has shifted from kind of those first moments that we talked about earlier and just where we were in our lives to, gosh, think about how much more is on our plate just on our day-to-day lives as opposed to 18-year-old versions of ourselves. And I think that's natural. I think, even you now as a dad with a young kid and having kids in my life, like you don't want your kids to have to think about all. You want to do everything you can for them to just be children and just to live their lives and to like experience as many experiences as they can and grow from all those. And they're going to have plenty of time to be adults and to pay bills and to be responsible for others. And, I just think, even in friendships, like that moment, you're just looking for companionship. You're looking for, people to kind of have your back and for people to be supportive of things you're doing and just to enjoy life together. And maybe a lot different than maybe you would need just a lot of the similarities, but it just comes in different forms, I think, as you get older. And so I never have any anger or like pushback or, I think my friends were exactly what they needed to be in that time. And I'm grateful for them and the people that I was closest to at that time. I think they were super helpful and trying to navigate that. And I'm still working on navigating those things today and trying to figure out kind of the ripple effects that stuff has caused. And I think as I've gotten older, like really started kind of getting excited about the possibility of, just thinking about what that did in terms of impact on my life and, how it still sort of impacts my life. And I've really been focusing a lot on trying to remember my mom, I think, trying to really, because it's sad. Didn't really get to know my mom, in ways that you get to know a parent. I think as you get alive, I mean, I know her as a kid, which is obviously, even you just think about relationships with your parents or people that you've known from a kid to still now, like those have changed dramatically.
Right.
Just in terms of you've matured a lot emotionally, you've had a lot more experiences, and then also you're not as dependent on these people. And so they're allowed to kind of be maybe different versions of themselves. And so those things obviously evolve and grow. And, I think it's a lot to ask of 18, 19, 20-year-olds who haven't been through that experience, think they know, but you really don't. And then, I kind of allowed my friends, I think, to kind of distract me. I think that's what I needed at the time. So
I don't think I really understood what it meant to be like a friend at that point in time. Like I had kind of romanticized notions of it from like watching movies and like pop culture. But then there was also the aspect of us being fraternity brothers, and it was pushed very hard that, this is a deep, deep bond. And so I had kind of, I think, sort of like conflated those things. I was like, I've got to be, I've got to be brother hero to Russell right now.
Yeah.
And I tried really hard to do the right things, but I think in hindsight, I wish that my mindset wouldn't have been trying to do the right thing, but just be there.
Yeah.
Because I actually think that like just being there and just like allowing someone to like take up space and to just be themselves is probably one of the best ways of showing that you care for somebody.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a lot of things that you say there make a lot of sense. But again, I go back to, I don't know, just what I was saying earlier. It's like, I think those are things that we learn as we get older, right? Like it's hard. Like I don't think that means that you are necessarily not a good friend or not there for someone because, hey, maybe there are ways I would have done things slightly different. I think that's part of just growing. That's part of learning. That's part of the college experience, right? Like you just sort of, obviously there's so many wonderful things that you learn within kind of the walls of the classrooms and, from the classical education, the core work that Oglethorpe provides and gives you. But like, there's so many things that you learn just about being a person, about interacting with others, about seeing how others carry themselves, seeing how others are friends to others, and just sort of trying to be as big of a sponge as you can. But gosh, it's hard, when you're 18, just you don't have the same perspective, obviously, that I have now. And I know I'm not going to have 15 years from now too, is going to shift and change. And so, yeah, I hear a lot what you're saying, but I don't feel like people weren't there for me in the ways. I feel like people were there for me in the ways that
I was just showing you how much I'm matured.
No, and it's true. I mean, gosh, there are a lot of things I think similar to you having those feelings of saying, man, as a friend, maybe I wish I could have been different or been in that space differently. I think there are a lot of ways that would have been more helpful now in my life at 39 that if I had have processed it differently or, done things a little bit differently that, maybe it would have been more inviting for people to be there maybe in ways that I needed them to be. But I didn't know. I mean, my gosh, I have no idea. I was just numb to all of that. I was running really from, my thoughts in those spaces were, okay, what do I need to do to try to be there for my dad and for my brother? And it was a tough time. My grandfather, my dad's dad, had passed away in April of 2005, my freshman year, of cancer. And then my mom got diagnosed with the exact same cancer in August. So, within an 18-month period, my dad had lost his father and his wife, best friend. And, I can't even imagine, now, like thinking about my family and my gang and just, holy cow, going through something like that would be incredibly difficult, and then just also, as you know, life doesn't stop, everything keeps going. People keep living their lives. People keep expecting you to continue to show up. And so, I was just kind of focused on others and I really wasn't worried about just trying to protect myself and kind of running from those things and almost just keep myself numb to it. I'm basically ignoring it, really.
You think focusing on like your dad and trying to be there for him helped you kind of like escape the grief that you were kind of going through at that time?
Yeah, that and being a college kid, I just kept kind of going along as best as I could. And, I remember having lots of conversations because, mom had gotten sick and I remember thinking, man, do I need to come being closer to mom or do I need to, she was very adamant about, I want you to keep living your life and keep pushing forward. And that seemed to be, at least from the conversations that we had, was sort of what she really wanted and what made her happy. And so kind of made it easy for me to just sort of be a little selfish, I guess, honestly, looking back on it. And, not that it's silly to like live in regrets or anything, but of course, you just wish you had a few more conversations here and there and not even so much conversations, but it's like, holy cow, that you've gotten older. It's just like, you just wish you had known more about what made mom. And, you just never going to have that opportunity in those ways. You read old letters, you can talk to people that knew her, you can talk to dad, you can watch family videos, those types of things. You can sort of relearn. But, as far as, trying to figure out, personal conversations, obviously those aren't going to be happening. So,
you don't believe in Ouija boards?
No, well, I don't know that I'm saying I don't believe in that, but I certainly haven't tried that for sure. So,
man. What's your favorite memory from college?
Gosh, there's so many great memories. I think a lot of the things that I take away from college and think about are kind of the quieter moments. I think I just sort of have sort of these impacting layers of different people that kind of came through my life over those 4 years at Oglethorpe. And, thinking back to my first year and the older juniors and seniors, and God, they seemed like they had everything so figured out and organized and under control, and trying to learn from those people. And then as you get older, you sort of shift into those roles, and younger folks come in, and teammates and classmates and those types of things, and you sort of shift. And I just think of all the sort of road trips from soccer and road trips from friends, and kind of those social moments. I think as you're sort of shifting your way through life, those are the things that really, I think, bring me a lot of joy and happiness when I think back to college. There's gosh, I have certain memories from the sports side of things that just lucky enough the last game Mom ever saw me play in college, I scored a goal. I thought it was one of the coolest things. Of course, at the time I had no idea, but certainly wasn't, her health situation wasn't in the space where I was like, oh, this is going to be the last game that she ever sees me play. But I remember it very, very clearly. And, that's a pretty special moment for me, and kind of remembering back on that. And yeah, I would say a lot of the memories I have are the fellowship moments. Those are the things that stuck with me and have stayed with me, through college. I think I have a lot of still pretty strong tentacles from folks that were in my time there. Obviously, those have changed quite a bit, and you don't see those people in the same ways. You don't cross paths in the same ways, but I think the connections are still certainly there. And I think even about you and me, I mean, obviously our relationship has changed, but yesterday our families got together for lunch, and it didn't feel like there was, some huge gap or some, big thing like that. There's enough of a foundation. And I think that's, a credit to kind of at least at our core, there was some good qualities that, even though maybe there are things that, like you said, you would have done differently, or you would have, handled yourself differently. I think clearly there's enough positive things, enough things that we were doing right when we were trying to learn through these things and wade through friendships and develop these connections that things have stuck and stayed. And to me, that's the strongest thing that I have, from school, that at least remain with me on a day-to-day basis, as opposed to a specific class or a specific, moment, those types of things. But yeah, I think a lot of the memories still certainly permeate with me quite a bit.
You said road trip, and it reminded me of St. Louis.
Yeah.
God, man, we were driving. You had printed out. This was back before, like, you could just get on the cell phone and put in like MapQuest. Yeah. We printed out MapQuest, and you had printed out like 3 sets of directions from like our fraternity house to like the hotel we were staying at, to like a gym, to like 3 different places, but they were all from the fraternity house. And so I looked at the wrong set of directions. And I remember we passed like the state line going into Missouri, and I was like, oh man, I missed the sign. But I'd been looking at the wrong directions. So we had to backtrack and like we ended up leaving Missouri, coming out. And then as we passed that state line again, I mean, God, you were so pissed. And I remember you looking at it, but see, Adam, there's your fucking sign, man. There's.
I think the arch too was a thing. I think we like went past the arch multiple times. Yeah, no, that was.
St. Louis is the Paris of America.
Paris of America. No, that was one of those youthful energy moments, I think, for sure. I don't know that in our older age we would have had the energy to do that, traveling through the night. But yeah, no, those road trips, those times together, the car karaoke, the different music, the snacks, just all the stuff. Yeah, those are fun memories to think back on, and definitely hilarious experiences for sure. No, those road trips are great. No, we had a lot of good ones. And like I said, I have some great memories of. Yeah, I think people ask me a lot, even now, still working in sports. It's like, oh, what do you remember from college experience? And of course, I remember a lot of the games. I could go through a lot of the specific moments, but without a doubt, I think, and I think this stands, you hear a lot of people talk about those things in sports. It's those locker room moments. It's the road trips. And yeah, anytime you go through experiences like that with people and you just build those key touch points, I think it's part of the reason why, it's part of that foundation that allows you to sort of drift in and out of people's lives and still focus on all the things that you have, but then have those connections with people as well. So I think it's important for sure.
I actually have thought a lot about it. And I was really close in college with you and another friend. And I was trying to, because like personality wise, y'all are exact opposites.
Yeah.
And I think what I like leveled it down to was that for me, I could tell that you were Russ. Like you were always just yourself. And that was at least how I perceived you.
Yeah.
And you cared a lot. Like you cared a lot about people, you cared about doing things right. Um the other friend, great guy. Shout out Aggies. He was himself as well. And you knew it the entire time.
Yeah.
But he didn't give a shit.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of you two essentially were like it was like an angel and a devil on my shoulder. And I had probably listened to the devil a little too much in college, probably.
Yeah. Well, the devil's a lot more fun in college, that's for sure.
No, but it kind of goes back to your point of like having that foundation. I think that the foundation was that I felt like I could be myself around you and not be judged too much.
Yeah. Gosh, I'm not really sure even how to respond to that. I certainly appreciate you saying those things. I would want people to feel like they can be themselves around anybody, certainly myself. And I think maybe some of that comes from maybe my own fear of being judged by others or wanting to fit in, or, you say you felt like I was being my authentic self. I certainly don't feel like I was not being myself, but I do think a lot of the things that sort of shaped who I was or who I was trying to be or the person I was carrying myself, I would be maybe not being totally fair to my own self if I wasn't saying that I struggle with that, like I do, like I think I kind of a people pleaser. I think a lot of just kind of the way I grew up and the people that were around me and the people that were influencing me. And, you don't obviously know that at the time, and you have all these experiences, these things kind of just stack up in your brain. And all of a sudden they've sort of kind of formed these ways in which you feel like you need to go about life. And yeah, I don't, gosh, none of that stuff was ever anything that I was certainly consciously thinking of at that age. But I just, my parents were just, one of the things that they were really focused on is just trying to be kind to everyone, trying to make everyone feel included, trying to make my brother and I feel a perspective of, how fortunate that we were, and to try to appreciate that, but also to include others that maybe didn't have, as things as easy as maybe we had it. And so just trying to love as many people as you could. And I think that was a big part of just sort of my childhood. And so I think I just brought a lot of that to college. And yeah, it just felt like I said, I don't want conflict. I want to avoid conflict. Yeah. So I'm always just trying to kind of bring people together and be a glue person as best as I can. So, and I think sometimes in a weird way, you say being authentic. I do think sometimes in being that person, you maybe aren't as authentic as a person too, if that makes sense.
What do you mean?
Well, I just think as a people pleaser, maybe sometimes, you just like, in order to maybe have a calmer dinner table or just have things a little more settled, you're willing to sacrifice, maybe is not the right word, but just willing to kind of go with the flow a little bit more, or maybe not be as strong in your opinions because, I'd rather have it this way, but it's not that big of a deal and everyone else is happy. So I'll just kind of go with the flow. And so
kind of having an internal debate, like, is it worth my like discomfort in this, or should I like do something and have a scenario where it could be even more uncomfortable?
Yeah, and I think a lot of times I just ultimately always sided with it was just I would rather have people just happier in a better space. And I think so, I do think that there are times when, in being that person, maybe sometimes you're not always, you don't create boundaries for yourself, or you don't like stick up for the inner person in yourself as much. And, not that that's a huge deal one way or the other, but I do think people I just wanted to, have people feel comfortable in a safe space, and just a place where they can be themselves. And, there certainly wasn't, especially at that time of my life, it was just trying to be the best person I could be. And there was not a lot of thought towards it in terms of intention.
Do you still feel that kind of people pleasing tendencies today?
A lot of times. Yeah. Things I think about a lot, things I don't know, I'd say I work on a lot. I just, I think as I've gotten older, especially now with things in my life and my family life shifting in terms of just when you're just sort of a single guy or you're just by yourself, like you can kind of just march to the beat of your own drum. You have total control of your time. You have a lot more flexibility. And I've seen my friendships and relationships change a lot as I've gotten more on my plate. And I think it's something that I've struggled with some and trying to sort of redefine those friendships because, for the longest time, I was the one that I felt like I made a lot of the efforts.
Yeah.
Like, I was the one traveling to visit friends or, because I had that freedom. I had that flexibility. It was easy for me to do. It was things I love to do. And now it's just a little bit harder with, other, life evolves and family changes and kids in your life. And, you got to be there for those folks. And so then it just sort of, your pie of life chart sort of shifts a little bit. And so just trying to figure out kind of how those spaces work. I think, it's things I think about a lot. And, in some ways I like being that person, but in other ways, I think sometimes, you're trying to sort of find that balance of, wanting people to be happy, but also wanting to do things that make you happy too at the same time.
Hopefully it's not a zero-sum game though, like where you're having to choose between the people in your life being happy and you being happy.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's a zero-sum game because I find a lot of joy in other people's joy as well. I think that's something that motivates me a lot. I don't know if that's just part of being in the family that I grew up in and being around the people that I grew up around. But yeah, I definitely find myself finding a lot of joy in others and genuinely like to help folks out when I can. And yeah, I just always think if I was in the same shoes or shoes on the other foot, how would I want folks to be there for me and kind of try to go about it accordingly in that space. I'm
going to brag about you and you don't even have to respond, man. But I meant to say something earlier. It kind of shows how selfless you are. Like earlier, you had said, my dad had lost his dad and his wife like within 18 months. What wasn't said was that you lost a grandfather and a mother in that same time period.
Yeah.
And then also this where you're like so focused on like other people and having making sure that they're okay. I think that speaks up a lot about like your character.
Yeah.
And you deserve to have somebody care for you that way too.
Thanks. Yeah, no, I do. I have a lot of very lucky to have people in my life and have a great support system and super, super lucky. I've got a great partner and Hannah and she's been phenomenal. And
I love her, by the way.
Yeah,
she's awesome.
Hannah's great. And she's, just really lucky to have someone that wants to kind of share their life with me and, isn't afraid to, push me in ways that maybe I haven't been pushed. I just, I've kind of had carved out sort of a space in life, I think that was comfortable for me and I'd protected myself from things. And I think that was great in a lot of ways, but I think I was missing a lot of things too that are really wonderful in life. Going about it kind of in a protective bubble by myself. And it's fun to have a support system like that to be there for me and that you can lean on, I think is tremendous. And I think it's made me a better version of myself too, which is something I'm very grateful for.
You, so Hannah has two kids, right?
Kids, yeah.
So, you've kind of been a stepdad for a few years now.
Yeah. Hannah and I met in 2019.
Okay.
So we met in December of 2019 and then obviously COVID hit and
got real close real fast.
And she was living in New York. I was living in Atlanta and we met in Indianapolis at NCAA. It was actually an LGBTQ plus one team training, trying to become facilitators to go back to campuses and sort of equip our coaches with better tools to sort of be more open and create more open locker rooms to all folk. Sports, I think traditionally sometimes maybe a little not
progressive beacons
as opening as we need to at sometimes. And so we, it was kind of a cool, it was a unique place to meet, but you sort of think about, man, this was something that was important to us. And so, just on that alone, it's sort of like, all right, well, this person's sort of in the same headspace as me. And then, it sort of develops, I don't know, she, all the credit goes to her. She reached out to me and sent me an email. And after we had broken camp from this thing. And I started texting her right away after the email.
Mhm.
We're all traveling back, and we ended up texting literally nonstop. She got back, I got back to Atlanta before her, and she had to drive from the airport back home to Skinny Atlas, where we live now. And it's like an hour drive. And I called her on the phone. We talked till 4 or 5 in the morning, and then just kind of were nonstop in communication, and then started seeing each other. I went up to Buffalo. She came, went up, then we met here in Skinny Atlas, and then she came down to Atlanta. And so long story short, she was traveling down on Thursday, like the 19th of March, 20th of March, like literally the Thursday, all the basketball to it was like the day after the Rudy Gobert had rubbed the mics, and it's all of a sudden started heating up everything. I remember thinking like, gosh, should we be mindful of flying down here? And just as a joke, because we don't even, down in Atlanta, we don't have COVID. Down south, like, it was not even, no one obviously as we saw as everything unfolded, the way we reacted to all those things. And anyways, she came down, and then it got much more serious. And so I was like, all right, my boss had called and said, we're going to shut the office down for a week. So, and he had met Hannah, knew Hannah, and it's like, she knew she was coming to visit. I said, I'm going to drive her back. I was looking for any excuse to spend some extra time with her. And I'd kind of packed a bag. I thought I was going to be there. We were going to leave Monday morning. Figured I'd be in New York for a couple of days and then come back, and I'd just go back to my office that following Monday. Things would kind of get back to normal, and drove up here. And then we ended up never getting back to sports, and we ended up quarantining. I didn't end up leaving New York until the following year. And so just all of a sudden it went from kind of this sort of, fun, getting serious, and definitely like it was, not that it was not, and it was never really casual with us. I think we were pretty hot, pretty intense, pretty quickly, just in terms of getting to know each other and appreciating each other. And then all of a sudden, that definitely ramped things up. And so trying to navigate through that, and so we've been together ever since, and have lived up here full time. Kind of post COVID, got through some things, tried to figure some things out, and eventually it was like, this is something that is pretty serious, and something that I want to pursue. Certainly much more so than an Atlanta, New York relationship. And so, I've been up here pretty full time for the last 3+ years. It's been great, and that's been a big part of the relationship. Is her boys. They're incredible. I mean, both of the kids I just love the two of them so much, and I try so much to hopefully make them feel loved, just try to support them as best as I can. And it's definitely a relationship that I work on a lot with both of them. They're both very different. One's a little bit older, one's out of college, and one's in just started 5th grade. So my relationships with them are definitely different, but definitely things I'm mindful of and things I work on quite a bit.
Much like me, you're not a halfway guy. You're going to be all or nothing one way. So I mean, I'm that is a very unique way of having and developing a relationship. But I feel like for you or me, that's just kind of like par for the course.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't say that it's a traditional love story, but it's a love story that I'm very proud of, very happy with. I certainly hope that Hannah and the boys, feel that, regularly and feel that support, because I certainly do from them. There's no doubt.
So Kaylin and I, we were trying to have a kid for a while, and we ended up, going through IVF, and thankfully it, like she was able to get pregnant the like first round. So I think we started, like we probably like started trying to have a kid like for a year, and then did the assisted ways. So all in all, I had about 2 years to like wrap my head around the idea of being a dad. Not enough time. That being said, though, like that time period, it was not like I was able to kind of like get it sort of, worked out like, okay, well, like my life is about to change, and I was kind of able to gradually work up towards it. You, on the other hand, you didn't have that 2 years. You had a couple of minutes, essentially. What was that transition like, going from single dude who could travel and meet friends whenever to now not only having a really cool partner, but also having 2 kids as well that you needed to kind of, step into a role for?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely an adjustment, but it was not, I mean, Hannah's children didn't come out of nowhere. It wasn't
Yeah.
like, so it was something that I was very aware of when our relationship started. It was something that it didn't offer any pause in terms of me continuing to pursue anything. So, I guess in some ways, I suppose it's similar to sort of what you're saying. You try to think about it, you try to prepare, you try to think about, gosh, how am I going to act or how am I going to carry myself? And, ultimately the biggest thing for me was just, I really, really loved and cared about Hannah.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously these are two people that are incredibly important and mean the world to her. And so, in my mind, when I thought about it, her and I were just never going to work out. It was never going to be a partnership, a relationship, a family dynamic that was ever going to work if it wasn't something that I was going to be fully all in on. Like there was no world in which I thought you can kind of be in a relationship with a human being and then kind of be half in with a huge part of that life. I don't, and it just happens to be children in this space, but it would just be like, if you're adamantly, care about Kaylin or something, and there was something very like you just despise the Purdue Boilermakers. Just I could never, do you know what I'm saying, or something like that. Like you could never be. You know what I'm saying? It's just like that's a big part. Obviously, I'm not comparing the two; they're very different. But it's just like
I could just never hate Purdue,
right? In order for it to work, it was never anything that really even crossed my mind in terms of like, gosh, I just knew that these were humans that I needed to be fully in with and like have loved every part of that experience, and it's added so much joy, so much perspective into just my day-to-day life. And it's been cool for, the three of them to kind of open themselves up to me and allow me to be a part of their space. Cause I know that's not easy for them too. Yeah. Like, it's like, I don't think they get enough credit for allowing me to be a part of their space because they have a really loving connection between the three of them. They've been through a lot together that I, wasn't in their lives for. So, they have this incredible foundation and love for each other. And so for them to all open their arms to me, it's something that I'm just really grateful for. And I think it allows the entire dynamic to be really loving and just to be super supportive.
How do you think the transition was like for them? Were they open from the beginning or did it take some time?
Gosh, I think it was, our story alone, I think, is a little bit unique. And then when you toss it into the space of like, it's all trying to unfold in COVID times, gosh, it was, it was really different. I think maybe in an unfair way to them, they didn't have as much of a say in it. It was just sort of, like all of a sudden, gosh, we're in COVID and this stranger is sort of now in our lives. And I think, Hannah and I had kind of talked, we sort of had, if plan's the right word, but we kind of talked about, all right, before COVID had happened, I had already made a plan and booked a flight to come up, and that was going to be kind of a spot in which we had felt our relationship had advanced to where, because I think she was being protective of, and understandably so, of her family and her boys, and didn't want them to feel overwhelmed. And so then obviously all of that was sort of thrown into a mixer with just the way the world was at the time. And so, I think they both adjusted a little bit differently because, one at the time when I met the youngest, he was 4 and the oldest was going into his senior year of high school. And so, they were just obviously at different spots. And I know a lot of credit to those two for just allowing me to be in their space, because I know that's not easy. And I think that's asking a lot of them. And, I think if it wasn't for them being so open to me, and I think a lot of it is just how much they love and care for their mom, I think that would have been difficult for Hannah and I to continue to kind of grow. But I won't speak for her or speak for the boys, but I think it's definitely been a transition for everyone, an adjustment, but something that's grown and grown and like has spiraled and gotten stronger and stronger as anything in life as we've shared experiences together and grown and built those. And I think, I've worked really hard or been really mindful of trying to just foster a space of like just love and just happiness, just wanting things to feel normal and stable and consistent. Just try to be really, for them to know what they're going to get from me and to be consistent with them in their lives.
2-part question.
Yep.
Favorite part about being a stepdad? Hardest part about being a stepdad?
Hardest part is snacks. Hardest part is we're always hungry. We're
Yeah.
always needing snacks. We never have enough chips and salsa. We never let them stay up late enough for the younger one. And you still am requiring them to go to school regularly. I think that sometimes, there's no real hard parts. The favorite part is, gosh, just being there to support them. They're both super involved in sports. We college athlete, like last year, Hannah and I, going to every one of those games, being a part of that together was really, really special. The younger one is super into hockey and soccer and baseball. And so just, being on sidelines and rinks and supporting them and, seeing them have successes and seeing them grow and seeing them find joy and happiness to me is by far and away the most rewarding spot in terms of my relationship with them and in their lives, for sure.
I know you were kind of being a little facetious, but you saying food is actually, if you were to ask me, what is the hardest part about Camden, besides the fact that he's 2 and he thinks that he's 25, it's food. I literally get anxiety around meal times because I'm going to prepare something that he will not eat, or I am going to pay like a lot of money for takeout for something that he's not going to eat. And then the second that is over, he's going to say, food. Yeah. So the fact that that's only going to continue that's a major bummer for me.
Yeah. Yeah. That and, pee goes in toilet. I think that's a big one you're going to find with Camden as he gets older. When you start that process, that was another big hurdle that we crossed from our youngest one, and still do.
Yesterday we were downstairs in the hotel restaurant, and Camden starts saying poop, and literally is pulling his pants down in the restaurant as he's saying that. So yeah, no,
very direct.
Yes,
direct,
he is very direct. So no, it's definitely a struggle. Like, we tried to do the potty training thing, but we've been on the road so much. It's just it's very difficult. I was thinking back. You and I just have such natural chemistry that you can just tell. Not the first time you and I have been behind a microphone together.
No, we've famously broadcasted a Stormy Petrels doubleheader baseball game. That was quite an experience. Went out to nobody, but we did it. We did announce it. It was quite a game.
I can't remember what season it was, but yeah, you and I were up like in the like behind the
right field.
Yeah, behind right field at Hermet Stadium. And we there was that table, and we bought a bottle of like Canadian Club or something like that.
Yep.
And ended up like drinking that during the doubleheader. And I think by the second game, you and I were calling a game that wasn't even happening on the field.
Yeah, it was. Gosh, it's funny to think back about it now. I'm not sure that was our most mature move to do. It was one of those things that, working in sports now, think about how far we've come in kind of the Division III broadcasting space. We were just at that time just doing on a thing called Team Line, and we just dial up, just over a line and broadcasting, streaming our like radio basically was the call. And there was supposed to be a game Friday. Friday had gotten rained out. You had to call and set these things up all through Team Line. And our sports information director it was during Masters Week, and he was down with his family in Augusta. And I remember calling him, and he was having a good time. And he allegedly had got us set up because the games had then shifted the next day, and everything had been set up for what we thought the schedule was. It got shifted. And yeah, long story short, we ended up having to call a doubleheader on that Saturday. We never were ever broadcast. We sat there and did 2 straight games to nobody. I mean, we just were, the two of us were up there. We had our cooler. You're right in that. And I mean, we had a great time doing it. And it was, it's definitely one of my favorite memories for sure. And a story I definitely still tell. And Yeah, Oglethorpe got smoked both of those games, and it's a shame nobody heard. Those would be funny to listen to. I think we're referencing Angels in the Outfield references. And,
yeah, there's two parts that I distinctly remember. At one point, like I was ragging on the I can't remember who we were playing, but I was ragging on the other team. Like, I can't believe they haven't taken this pitcher out. Like he's been struggling the past 2 innings. Blah 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 blah. And you go, Adam, you do realize we're on defense right now, right? Like I wasn't even calling for the right team. And yeah, the second thing was it was JJ Rizzo coming up to bat. I think it was like the 8th inning of game 2, something like that. And I don't remember if it was you or me that started off, but it was something like, "Hey, Adam, do you see in the batter's box? There looks like there's somebody with JJ Rizzo." And he's like massaging his shoulders or something. Yeah. And then you and I both got up and started doing the Angels in the Outfield wave.
I do. I remember, and I'm pretty sure.
Did he hit a home run?
I don't remember the specific at bat. I don't even remember if that it was an Oglethorpe person, but I do remember us making that joke. And yeah, whoever it was smashed one off Provo Fieldhouse. Like literally, it was one of the funniest coincident moments. Because obviously, I think at that point we were kind of patronizing the whole situation.
Oh, yeah.
And the way it lined up it was a great joke that went out to nobody. But it was, that was quite a moment. No, that was very, very fun. That was a great memory.
Oh, yeah.
And just funny to think now, like my professional life going on and having that be such a part of my day-to-day life now. It's funny to think back at kind of those early moments and where I was and how it's evolved for sure.
Is it more fun to call games with someone who's actually competent, or do you prefer the wild card?
Well, I mean, obviously, I think it's much more fun for the wild card. But I think maybe as a more professional person in the space I'm at now, I think maybe a more dependable caller is maybe preferred.
I'm trying to mature into it. So if you ever need, if somebody ever calls out sick, please give me a call.
Oh, I will I'll definitely give you a ring for sure. maybe we'll have different things in the cooler, but No,
I think some seltzer water would be fun for me this time around.
No, for sure. I think it'll be a much different packed cooler this time, but I think we still have a good time.
You've definitely matured over the years, which, it's been 20 years. So hopefully you have a little bit. What do you think has been your biggest perspective shift from, being that 18, 19-year-old kid to the Russell Rayton that we see before us today?
I think just having a better understanding of, you really don't have any idea of kind of what's going on in folks' day-to-day lives. You don't know what people have gone through in their life's experiences. I think there's a lot that goes into kind of the person that you are, the person that you've become, and just trying to allow, grace and patience with everybody. And I just really believe that, as humans and just people, nobody's out to try to make someone have a bad day on purpose. And so, just trying to continue to find that patience and, just wanting to have love for everybody. I mean, just, it's not always going to be that easy. It may not always feel that way. And, but just trying not to let those, when it doesn't feel like everything's lining up or maybe connecting in those ways, just to not let it, sour the space or, a moment or anything like that. Just, but like anybody, just, you have more experiences, you have more perception, you have more perspective. All those things I think really help and just kind of growing and shaping you into the space that you're in as a reaching 40-year-old.
Do you think your 18-year-old self would be proud of the man that you become?
I hope so. I think so. I still think that I'm try to, have as much love and care for folks as I did then, hopefully more in ways. I think those ways in which I show it have obviously shifted a lot. I mean, I think at times, in college, maybe I showed that I'm like, yeah, I'm willing to hang out till XYZ in the morning, or I'll get on the table with you and play some pong, or, I think obviously the ways in which you show those are significantly different than as an 18-year-old, but I hope that there's a lot of things that are very similar and have just kind of maybe been a little bit more fine-tuned with life experiences and Yeah, I certainly hope so. But, I think like a lot of us, I'm still trying to figure that out. I'm
Yeah.
still trying to learn. I still want to get better. I think there are so many ways that I can grow as a person to really help continue to strengthen, all the relationships
Yeah.
I have in my life, whether they be, partner, a brother, father, a friend, or a son, a friend, those types of things, my relationships with the boys, like those are things that I'm constantly trying to hopefully evolve and grow. And a lot of times I find myself maybe wanting to hang on or be stagnant in ways because I get comfortable in those spots. And I think there are good things about that, but I think Hannah's helped me a lot in terms of it's okay to continue to grow. Like you don't necessarily are being irresponsible or being unfair to things by growing and moving and kind of keep evolving. And so, I think it's something I constantly sort of working on and thinking about and trying not to stress about. But yeah, I think like all of us, you just want to continue to be there for folks that are in your life because that's what it's all about. I think I think that's that's certainly what brings me the most joy is just those connections that I have with people.
Obviously you were in Atlanta.
Yep.
Then you moved to Cleveland for a little bit. I got to visit you there.
Yep.
Man, that was a fun experience, man.
Great
Cavs
trip.
in 7.
Cavs in 7. Didn't pull it off. But it was...
yeah, I think they actually lost game 5, but neither here nor there.
Yep.
Then coming up to Skinny Atlas, and I get to see you up here, man. You've actually been a very big part of my traveling journey as as an adult. Before I met Kaylin, I'd only flown one time, actually.
Wow.
And so now you and her have kind of helped expand my my geographic sense.
Yeah.
But I think where I was getting with that was that you were actually the person who I have stayed connected with, still even like where school now is still over, but I still stay connected to you.
Yeah.
And that's certainly something that is very rare for me. I'm trying to figure out why I still after like all these years, like still want to be close, still want to have a great friendship with you. And I think you've kind of shown it throughout this, whole episode, man. Like you're incredibly selfless, you're very thoughtful, and man, you're a phenomenal friend. I really appreciate you.
Oh, thanks, man. Appreciate it. We've definitely changed a lot, right? I mean, I think initially we bonded over kind of the
who had better hair?
Yeah, I did meet you had a full head of hair. You had no tattoos. I think maybe we stood on different party lines at the time. I think you've grown and changed a lot. I think there's been a lot of iterations of our friendships too. I think, if we're being honest, like, we had a great connection and friendship in college. And then, post college, I think we kind of shifted and we're kind of in different spaces and maybe not as connected. And then I think a lot of it is a credit to you. I think you kind of looked inside and took some inventory about kind of where you were going and the direction that you were headed in your life and sort of felt maybe that wasn't the direction or the space or the place that you wanted to land or to be in. And I think, I think you've done a lot of work in sort of course correcting on the direction that you wanted to go. And I think in that space, I think we've sort of connected a lot more, kind of post in kind of this second iteration of our friendship. And then obviously, with that, I think our friendship changes because our individual lives have changed a lot, where your priorities on a day-to-day life with your family are shifted a lot more than they were 20 years ago. And same with me. And so we now connect on sort of different spaces beyond whether or not a left-handed quarterback can be effective out there on the football field. And still mindful that if we hadn't had that ankle injury down there at first base, that maybe this would be a sports podcast post your playing career after being in the professional ranks for a couple of years. But no, jokes aside, I mean, I think that's normal. I think it's similar to a lot of my friendship, connections. Just everything has shifted and everything has changed. And I'm glad that we've stayed connected. I'm glad that you kind of, reached out and kind of rekindled and restoked that flame. That I think the good news is there were enough embers still remaining that while kind of the friendship fire maybe wasn't as big as it had been at times, like we talked about earlier, that kind of that foundation and that love kind of overpowered all the other distractions and allowed for kind of an opening to kind of find our way back into our lives and figure out what that space looked like again as friends.
Actually, before Mike Vick came to Norfolk State, I had to sit down with him, and I was like, "Yo, Mikey, I understand that you normally are the best left-handed quarterback in any town you're in.
Right.
If you come into the Tidewater, buddy, you're going to be number 2, and you got to get used to that." He was very respectful.
I'm sure.
Yeah, it was a great conversation.
Yeah.
And he agreed. So that's the only reason why he's in Norfolk State.
Similar lateral quickness. Yeah. The elusiveness for sure. But I know we don't have like a hard stop, but you've been obviously asking a lot of the questions.
Yeah.
So, how much do you think, kind of coming into this sort of this idea of friendship, and when you think about the friendships, like I do think there's been a big shift in your life. And, how much do you, when you think about ways in which you've changed and developed, and think about how different you were as a person now comparative to where you were when we first met, how do you think that's helped you grow your friendships and, and kind of those relationships? Because like, I do think that I've seen a big shift in you from a distance. Of course, it's very macro. I don't, it's not a day-to-day basis. We don't live in the same town. So it's from, 30,000 feet, but I definitely think that there's been a really healthy shift in kind of your day-to-day space. And do you think that's something that's helped you find maybe not as many connections, but deeper roots?
So it seems counterintuitive, but the biggest shift that I have had, whenever I was younger, I was so focused on everyone else around me, like it was the people pleasing to the nth degree, to where I would have been or said anything that I thought you wanted,
sure,
in order to have you like me at that point in time. And so, like you would hang out and be like, "Hey, yeah, Adam, he's a cool, gregarious guy," but you didn't really get the real Adam. You got what I thought you wanted.
Yep.
I'm actually focusing a lot more on trying to stay true to who I am. And so I don't really quite have that same like worry, like, "Oh my God, he's not going to like me if I say this or if I do that." It's much more like, this is how I feel. This is, like what I want to say. And I've like gotten a lot better at accepting, like, if I say this and, he doesn't take it the right way and we're not friends, that's a bummer.
Yeah.
But I would rather stay true to myself and, have the friendships that are, really have that foundation that you were talking about earlier. So yeah, like I said, I think that it would be the perspective shift of trying to have a bunch of friends versus focusing on having quality friends. That would be my.
How did you break away from, because I think one of the things that I struggle with is, like, I would say that I still do have sort of similar thoughts or mindset but it's like you have this weird balance of trying to, like, I want to be the person I am. It's like, how did you even find out who that was when you're, for the longest time, so focused on just trying to make others happy? I mean, like, I think about it too. Like, I don't really know that I even thought that much about even who I was. So you're just trying to figure that out. And then also you just have so many layers and so many years of kind of trying to make others happy or trying to sort of be this people pleaser. So then you almost feel like, well, being true to myself is like making others happy. Like, that's what I want. I want other people to be happy. So then when I maybe create this boundary or I say these other things, then all of a sudden I'm left feeling kind of like I have this ick feeling. And it's like, I think that is a tough sort of, because you kind of have these calluses, or you sort of have these natural, like, you've sort of acted in this way. And so I act this way and I feel this way and I'm happy. And then it's like, now I'm trying to shift, and I want that shift because I do know, I think that I know that I'm going to be happier, sort of leaning into that more. But in like those initial hits of adrenaline or, those highs, like you lose those, and then I've always like that's something that I've really struggled with and kind of sort of as I've gotten older and tried to sort of readjust kind of those friendships or those connections. It's not easy. I'm trying to find that out. I don't know. Like it's something I work on constantly.
So I literally like I've had to rewire my brain.
Yeah.
Because the people please, it was to such an extent. So I thought that like in order for me to feel safe, like in an environment, I had to make sure that everybody around me was comfortable, was happy, and so that meant me completely diminishing myself and focusing solely on everyone else. That was something that I knew was not a good way of like living, but I was absolutely powerless to do anything about it whenever I was actually in those situations. And so what I have found effective is, it's through therapy. It's called internal family systems. It's kind of working with parts. So, if you and I are talking and I'm like, oh my gosh, I think I just said something and Russ may not like this. Oh my gosh. I kind of have to like sit back and talk to myself, like, hey, it's okay. So, you and Russ have been friends for a while, like kind of just talk myself down from a ledge.
Yeah.
So like I am now able to, kind of like soothe that, like that feeling whenever it comes up. And before, the only way I knew to soothe that feeling was to make sure that you were okay.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? I kind of feel like I rambled a little bit.
Oh, it makes sense. It's not easy. Makes sense. Yeah. No, I think
it was long, but in the end, it made sense.
Yeah. No, and I think those things are obviously. It sounds like it's something that you've been working on. I mean, it sounds like it's a daily thing. It's something that you work on.
I mean, by the minute, really.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a lot of work, but like hands down the most rewarding work I've ever done, but also the hardest.
Yeah, man. Life is it's hard. It just is. And there's so many wonderful things about it, but it's definitely it's definitely you just one day at a time,
I really appreciate you saying that you've seen a change. That kind of, that really makes me feel good.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where I've like worked so hard, but it's kind of been on the, on the inside where it's not like I've been like working out or something.
Yeah.
So you can't really tell, but basically on steroids on the inside.
I think too, like, I don't know, it's weird. Like as much as sometimes I guess I've said like, I do think maybe there's some things, if we're honest in our friendship, like I've kind of said some pretty tough things to you too. I feel like we've had some pretty intense conversations over the time. And I've sort of, as opposed to maybe saying what you want to hear, I've sort of said some pretty, which I know when I've got done with some of the conversations that we've had, I've left feeling like, man, if somebody was to say that to me or someone who I thought was a friend, man, those are some pretty tough moments. And I don't know, hopefully maybe part of the reason that we've stayed through is at some point, probably not in those moments, but at some point when you've sort of allowed those conversations to breathe or let those words sort of sink in, you've at least had some thought like, okay, wow, that was, at least maybe there was some weight into that and that the person does care about me. So as opposed to maybe just enabling some of the other spaces that you were in, I think at times. And I think maybe that's part of the reason too, why we've sort of stayed connected. I think you've at least felt like you could kind of lean on me in that space.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, no, definitely so. And I think like before, it wasn't like being upset with you. It was me feeling like a deep sense of shame in myself.
Yeah.
For you even to like have to approach and have a conversation, like you're talking about, like I felt like shame and embarrassment, not really like anger towards you.
Yeah. Well, those are hard things. And
I appreciate you doing that though, because
conversations to have.
You were much like earlier, I was talking about the angel and the demon. I mean, you were the angel, like, hey man, this is not the way you want to like live your life. You may want to get help. And at the time, I knew you were right in theory, but I felt absolutely powerless to change. And so it's kind of nice to, kind of nice to know that people can change.
Yeah, and I guess maybe that's a little credit to the 18-year-olds in us that we had at least connected it on some levels, and I knew you well enough at some foundation, and had spent time with your family and just sort of saw, in the quiet moments, I kind of knew where your ground was centered. And, even though maybe there had been some straying away from kind of that core of the things that I think that you wanted to be, I guess I just knew that that was always there. And so it was
Yeah.
easy to then have those conversations of like, hey man, I know this isn't really the space that you want to be in. And I know what you want it to look like. So let's make it work. Like, let's make it look like that. 'Cause you've got everything, within you to make that happen. And you deserve to have that happiness. And it's clear. I mean, just, listening even to the first episode of, as a subscriber of the Act Out podcast and listening to the first episode, like, it's clear that there was a lot of work and a lot of shift and a lot of change. And it's fun to see like this new iteration of you and the person that you've kind of grown into and are still, growing into, which is fun. And it's fun. It's fun to see you being a dad and hanging with Camden and being a husband and hanging with your wife. And yeah, it's pretty special as a friend to see.
Yeah, man. Let's say like 20 years from now, we come back together and reminisce on what these last 20 years were like.
I look forward to visiting your New York City studio. That'll be fun.
I hope so.
It'll be a good date weekend for Hannah and I, and it'd be fun to get down to the city and get into that new studio.
All right, but Russ, thank you so much, bud.
Appreciate it.